Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Shanalytics. I gotta start off by introducing my guy Jason Aponte. Like usually I'm coming in here talking about this or that, but Jason, I love the content you make. I mean, I got introduced to you through Grant originally, but just seeing what you do on the Sprint Right Option podcast and all the different content you're putting out, I've been really enjoying the stuff you've been doing lately.
Ben, first of all, thank you for having me. And man, I really appreciate those kind words. Just a guy trying to talk football, while we have a chance to do it. Got a little extra time on my hands and kind of fell into it. But it never gets old hearing people, give compliments like that. And I appreciate you a lot, Ben. And just glad to be here, man. Let's talk some 49ers.
Yeah, of course. And just for everyone, my Twitter is down in the below, or it's down below in the description of this YouTube video, and all of Jason's info is down there. His YouTube, his Twitter, his podcast, the Sprint Right Option podcast. So if you haven't checked that out already, which I assume most of you are here because you know Jason already, make sure you go check that out. But no, Jason, the stuff you've been doing with Grant and just all the offseason. I know I appreciate it as a 49ers fan, and I know all the people who are watching this right now appreciate the stuff you've been doing, man. So shout out to you.
I appreciate that, man. Again, like I said, appreciate the kind words. And yeah, I'm just a guy, man, just talking ball and, just having fun. That's it. That's how everybody should be looking at it in any sort of content creation.
Absolutely. And I think, before we get into our first topic, that's what I really enjoy, just having these fun conversations where on Twitter, everything is so 140 characters, this, 140 characters, that, where, we can, on these type of things, we can get into more deep conversation and really talk about what's going on with the team. So going off that, I think the first thing I do want to talk about, and this kind of came up just in the middle of one of your live streams, actually, Tom Pelissero reported, I don't remember the exact words of the report, but he essentially said that the 49ers won't be able to do the last of their rookie camp or rookie workouts, right? So
it's I believe the way that they classified it was rookie development program. So when you find that out, it's not practices or anything like that. It's, the NFL has programs at the end of camp for rookies to get acclimated to NFL celebrity life and other things. And I'm sure that they go over some film and stuff, but I think it's more about the acclimation from being a college player to now being an NFL player, how to handle that, what sort of things you can avoid. They almost give advice. That's pretty much what it was, the way I understood it. So.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I gathered from it too, because even then, it seems like this is something that the 49ers knew ahead of time, even going into that press conference that they had yesterday where Kyle said he wants to continue to work with the rookies, right? So it doesn't seem like it's going to affect that in any kind of way, but like you're saying, maybe more of those formalities, those specific meetings that they have in place for every single rookie, some of those will probably get taken off the slate. But the kind of work that we're hoping and expecting from Kyle with the Trey Lances, the Trey Sermons, the Aaron Banks of the world, that stuff is still going to be going on from what I've gathered.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is really just a slap on the wrist at this point. It's really more a warning shot, and it feels like the NFL is looking for something to be outraged about. I'm sure that this has happened before. I believe Seattle had infractions like this, same sort of deal, where they were penalized as well. But it's just with coinciding with the press conference, coinciding with what's happened with the injuries, to have this happen too. Any skeptic of Kyle Shanahan right now is probably raising more questions at this point. That's not me, but I'm just saying that's what is probably out there right now.
Yeah, and we know you're an only Shans guy, of course, but I think, like you were saying, more than anything, it's really just a slap on the wrist. And I think the reason that so many 49ers people or people in the media even make a big deal out of something like this is because there's not a lot going on right now. And it's just that part of the offseason. And there's things that people just kind of grab onto. And I think this will probably be one of those sort of things because the 49ers don't have a lot of news to put out there. And it's just part of the game sometime, unfortunately.
And it just comes at a time where there's so much indecision with canceling camp and all those things. So today, on Grant's show, and pretty much everybody out loud was wondering, well, injuries, is that reactionary to why this happened? I thought it was that. Didn't know that was what was coming. That's what ended up happening on the stream. But yeah, all of that stuff together. Any skeptic of Kyle Shanahan right now is really, really scratching their head at this point because they have all these things now that they can use to further their thought process. I don't even want to say narrative because you could see that there might be a little bit. I could see the argument. It's just, I'm not partaking in it. So,
Yeah. No, and I think it's not even a carelessness, but there's certain people who will characterize it that way, and I totally understand that criticism, just like you were saying. But the first thing I do want to get into, and the first question I threw your way, and I'm really interested to see your answer because I think for a lot of these questions, I have an idea of what you're going to say, but I actually don't know what your answer is going to be to this, Jason.
Okay.
Why do you think the 49ers ended up drafting Trey Lance?
This is a really good question. Honestly, all I would be doing right now is speculating based on what you've heard them say after what they loved about Trey Lance. Then you can kind of deduce, put the code together. I'm gonna go ahead and say I think it's one, the maturity, two, the smarts to understand where to go with the ball. You heard Kyle Shanahan talking about, okay, there's incomplete passes, but they're the correct reads. He gets to his reads. Those sort of things are very important. For the speculation in the media, they speculated that Kyle Shanahan wants somebody who's a robot, a Kirk Cousins type, progresses quickly. Nick Mullins, big mind. He loves Nick Mullins, right? Now, how is that not going to be part of the process with Trey Lance, especially considering that he ran similar concepts that Kyle runs, called his protections out, showed that he can go through progressions and put balls in tight windows with all that athleticism. So I'm going to say that it's his maturity, him being able to look at the protections, run a pro style offense. But I think it's up here. I think it's really they got blown away by speaking with him, how he handles himself, and how he was able to get through understanding, playbooks, because he's had so many similar things at NDSU. You can say what you want about competition, and that's all fair, but he still did run a pro style offense that has so many Shanahan concepts in it. So I believe that it was more, one, just being mature, and two, I think it's really what was up here that cinched the deal for him on top of all the athleticism.
And I think the part to me that you nailed about that is I think when they talked to Trey Lance and they got to know the person more than anything, they're probably looking at him versus the other two guys they were considering. And I think you're right, cerebrally. I think that he just blew them away in a way to where even Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson weren't being asked to do the type of things that Trey Lance was being asked to do at NDSU, right? And you really nailed all the reasons why I think they drafted Trey Lance. And there's one small part of this, though, I think that's important. And I don't want to say it's a determining factor, but I think it's definitely something that adds to the allure of Trey Lance is that I think he can be really successful in a run-first system, right? And we know with the 49ers, that's the type of system that they're going to be running now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if Kyle Shanahan's the head coach. So I think when you take everything into consideration, like you were talking about before, right, with the cerebral stuff, with the physical traits that are amazing, of course, right? When you take all of that into account and then add on top that he can be very successful in a running system, in a run-first system like he was at North Dakota State, that probably is what, to me, I think would set him over the edge versus some of the other guys that they were considering, like Justin Fields and Mac Jones.
Yeah, it's tough to speculate because I was a big Justin Fields guy. I still am. I can't back away from my analysis. If I went through my evaluations and I saw that I wanted Justin Fields over Trey Lance, I can't deny that. When I first got through my process in the beginning, I hadn't looked through everybody, but the first person I looked at was Trey. I fell in love with him automatically. It wasn't until I started looking at Justin Fields that I started to say, okay, I think this should be the pick at 3. That's neither here nor there, but I think you're absolutely right about all those things. The athleticism, that doesn't need to be explained. It's on tape. You see the throws, you see how fast, you see how big he is. But once you talk to the kid, I think that's what changed everything else. So I don't know I can't speculate what happened in any interview that he had with Justin, who he knows for a long time from QB Collective, or anything that has to do with whether they met with Mac or Zach Wilson. I don't know how that went, but apparently Trey Lance did enough to the point where John Lynch goes on PFF's podcast and says, we left Justin Fields pro day, and he's drawing up plays for Trey Lance. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with the stories that are coming out afterwards that kind of reaffirm that it was Trey pretty much the whole time.
Yeah, and I think the only part of this decision that the 49ers made that I would guess I questioned was when they made the trade, right? I still don't completely understand why that had to happen when it happened. Now, I get the idea of going and getting your guy, right? But just putting that aside, I think where they ultimately landed, the guy that they ended up going with for the reasons they went with him, I think it was the right decision. And like you were saying, to me, I think that one quality that Trey has is that CEO kind of mentality, that true quarterback face of the franchise type of thing that people talk about all the time, And I think also with Trey, and I just want to end this topic on this, to me, he has all the intangibles and he has all the things you can't teach to a guy, right? But then he has some flaws and some issues where you could see improvement and you could see him get better at these type of things. So I'm really excited if I'm a 49ers fan because, well, even you being the biggest Kyle Shanahan defender, no, he's not the quarterback developer that some of these other guys in the NFL are, right? But even just outside of that, with Trey, like I said, with that run first offense that they're going to be running, it kind of perfectly melts into what Kyle's trying to do.
And I think Kyle was tired of the athletic quarterback killing the 49ers last year. And I think that you have to understand when you're looking at staring down the barrel of Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, now Matthew Stafford 2 times per year, you need a little bit more at the position. You need guys that can bail you out. Coach kept talking about, yeah, I can make the correct play call. Sometimes when things go wrong, though, you need a guy who can bail you out, like a Mahomes, like a Allen. Not saying that that's what he'll be, but I think that was kind of the tip. Once I heard that quote, I knew it wasn't Mac. That doesn't make any sense. How can you say any of those things? And then he tried to curtail that by saying, but, you want a guy who wins from the pocket. No. You said the first part out. You let the toothpaste out of the tube, and that's it. So, yeah, and who knows what they were hearing about who was going to be moving up for who. Apparently, Atlanta really, really wanted Trey. That's who they really – that's why – I mean, it almost gives itself away because once Trey Lance comes off the board at 3, they go Kyle Pitts and not Justin Fields. So yeah. I think that was a big sign that they really – if Trey would have been there at 4, I don't think that there's any doubt that Trey would have been the pick there. So,
yeah. And I think and that's a great thing to point out because when I was bringing up earlier how I questioned the timing of it, that's the sort of thing where you understand where the 49ers are coming from. If they had the intel that if Atlanta or even a team like Carolina, right, or the Broncos said they think they're going to go up and try and trade for their guy, you have to go and make that move. And trading where the 49ers did, it eliminates all the other possibilities of a team jumping you or getting the advantage on you. So, in that way, yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. And I think, like, when I talk with people about that, that's kind of the only pushback I have, right? But when I talk through it, at the same time, it's like, just go get your guy. That's what matters. Right. It doesn't, like, we don't spend all this time thinking about, oh, how much did the Chiefs give up for Patrick Mahomes? Or how much did the Bills give up to trade up for Josh Allen, right? You don't know the actual compensation. And I think it's the same thing with Trey Lance. Like, we're so in the moment, right, that we talk about all these picks that they're giving up. But if he's successful, it's the kind of thing where fans will quickly forget what's going on.
Also, don't discount Shanahan and that front office taking heat for not evaluating Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, even if that wasn't on the board. So what you do when you put yourself at 3 is you put yourself in position to now take a look more at Justin Fields, take a look at Matt Jones, take a look at Trey Lance a little bit more. Even if it was Trey the entire time, being at 3 that early means, like Kyle said, we don't have to be shy anymore. We can go to everybody's pro day. We can watch. And I really believe that part of it was them trying to evaluate every single one for pick 3. But part of it was also making sure that the fan base and the public knew we exhausted our searches and this is what we came up with. Because it's one thing to pass on Patrick Mahomes and pass on Deshaun Watson. It's a whole other thing to not even go scout them or watch them. I know John Lynch said that he went to go see Patrick Mahomes, but that was more just to show face and show to other people that they were looking. But it's one thing to pass on them because I'm never going to kill you for your evaluations. Again, they know more than I do. I'm just a guy in a room. Yeah. But you do have to show everybody that you've changed and you are going to be looking at everyone and exhausting and turning over every stone. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because, like, if you even look at the quarterback workouts this year, and I'll just end this topic on this, Justin Fields with Mac Jones, with Trey Lance, they had 30 of 32 teams there, 31 of 32 teams there. It's the kind of thing where every team is sending someone because you have to know. Even in the heyday of the Tom Brady Patriots, Bill Belichick and his scouts weren't just ignoring quarterbacks. I mean, especially at the end, like we saw. So, yeah, I think it's the type of thing where fans get worked up for certain specific things. But really, when you try and understand the whole process and how the 49ers got to where they got to, makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. They always, again, it's a bit of a PR move as well too, just to say, hey, look, we went to everybody and this is what we came up with. So like, you're on the clock now, Kyle. You got to make him work now.
Yeah, well, and like you just said, it's more about covering yourself, and it's that
Yeah.
PR mentality. You got to make sure that you're not just going to leave yourself for the type of criticism like, oh, we never went and looked at Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes. It's the kind of thing you're covering yourself retroactively. Right?
Absolutely.
So, the next thing I do want to ask you about, though, and this seems to be the 49ers topic of the last 72 hours, really,
right.
since the announcement came that Justin School and Tarvarius Moore suffered season-ending injuries. Do you think this team is doing enough to fix the injury issue or address it?
Ben, I want to normalize in this space not having answers and saying, I don't have a good answer for you. And I don't. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm not a strength and conditioning coach. I have no idea what goes into practices. I will say this. With Kyle Shanahan, with these questions, like we just talked about before, about, all right, so right now, minicamp is closed because they're being docked that for rookies or the development program. These injuries, the coach has to speak about that. The coach has to have good answers. And for me, if this wasn't an issue, I'm going to point to two things on how this organization views this. One, they fired the entire strength and conditioning coaches from last year. So clearly, they think it's an issue. Also, after the draft, when everyone complained about 2 running backs, O-linemen, Kyle Shanahan came out and said, we can't have what happened last year happen again. So injuries are on this team's mind, on this organization's mind. So at the end of the day, I don't know how to do that. Are they doing enough? I don't know, because I'm not a strength coach. I don't know about, I've talked to some people. It was great to see Croc and Will Blackman and those guys talk about it. That was amazing. Anybody who hasn't checked it out.
Interview. Go check that out if you haven't already.
I implore you to go check that out. Talk to a few other people who have played the game, are really touched in. Some people brought up the point of sometimes when you have bad motion lifting weights in your legs, then that can lead to things down the line because you've already been putting your knees under stress, your legs under stress, things like that. So when you try to make a move, all of a sudden something pops. Now, I don't know the correlation between that, but that's just what I heard. Again, I'm not here to speculate. I'm not even here to give you a BS answer when it comes to that. What I will tell you is this. As the head coach, Kyle Shanahan has to have answers. That's really what it's about. When it's going well, you get all the praise. When it's not going well, you got to be able to stand there and give answers. So for him to say it's a part of the game, it is. For 49er fans, it is very, very reasonable for you to be concerned because of what's happened with this team, not just last year and the year before that, because in 2019, they had a rash of injuries. The only reason that wasn't talked about as much is because those names didn't include Nick Bosa, Jimmy Garoppolo, Raheem Mostert, any of those guys. So, yes, you had... Yeah.
I was just going to say the only guy I can even think of, just with you mentioning that, George Kittle, he's pretty much the only major Niner who missed time that year at all, right?
In 2019. Yeah. So it's one thing to count the bodies. So when people say, well, they had 19 people on IR, well, who are those people? They weren't the cornerstone people. You fast forward to 2020, every single, if it's not the cornerstone, it's the guy right under him and then the guy right under him. So that's the sort of thing that happens. So clearly it's on this organization's mind. I can't tell you what they can do because I don't know. But I know that the coach has to definitely stand there and give reasonable answers and find a way to make this stop happening because you're the end all be all. When things are going right, you're going to get all the praise. When it's not, then you've got to figure out something. You're the leader. So I don't know, but I know that it's on this organization's mind based on their actions.
And I'm glad you brought up that last point specifically because this rolls right into what I wanted to talk about with this topic, which is I don't have the answers for everything. That's okay. But you know what I do have an issue with, and the thing that gets me fired up, not in the good way, is when you hear the answer from Kyle Shanahan that I believe it was Grant's question. It might have been someone else's when he said, oh, we're doing all kinds of things to change our workouts, high, low intensity. We're changing the way we do practice, this, and that, right? That was all from this offseason. If everyone didn't hear that during that press conference, go and check that out when you have a chance. Because I want to read off this quote from John Lynch in 2020, which is pretty much the same exact quote. Quote unquote, We've done a lot of work to try and address those things so that they don't happen by giving guys high and low days and altering our schedule. Ben Peterson and his group have done a really nice job. So to me, this is where I have issue. This team from 2020 to 2019 is answering the same question the same way when it's their biggest problem.
It's a good find.
So,
That's a good find.
And by the way, that is from one of Grant's articles from last year. I was searching up injury stuff, and specifically it's the article about soft tissue stuff from the offseason 2020. But to me, that's the kind of thing to where I'm like, what is this team doing? They're just
a good catch.
It seems like they're taking cookie cutter answers, right? And just
that's coach speak.
That it's coach speak, and it either tells me one of two things: that they don't want to answer those questions, or they aren't willing to acknowledge it themselves. So or they don't know. They don't know. That's the other thing. And that's the scariest part of it all. It's like, what if they don't know? Like, oh gosh.
Wow, Ben, that's a good catch, man. I had no idea. That's a great catch.
And that stuck out to me because that's the type of thing to where, like, you can actually show progress, right? From 2020 to 2021, you can say, oh, last year we were doing high, low intensity stuff. We were doing all this different stuff. This season, we're working on our recovery. We're working on our cryogenic stuff. We're in the Bay Area. We have all this technology available to us. It's all these kind of little things with this type of stuff that makes me feel like, Kyle Shanahan can be nonchalant sometimes with some of these issues. I mean, I love the guy, but at the same time, like you're saying, you can't have this constant coach speak where you give the same answers over and over to the same questions.
And coach looked flustered. He doesn't want to talk about it, and at times I love him. I think that, he's incredible, obviously, but yeah, that attitude of, wow, it's part of the game. And then just sitting back and it's like, dude, it is. You know what? I don't have any media training. If someone asked me about injuries and they forced me to go up there in Kyle Shanahan's place, I would have said that. It's part of the game. It's what happens. But I shouldn't be saying, me saying that and you saying that is two different things.
It's absolutely. And I think that's an important thing too, and Grant pointed this out to me today on Discord, and I think it was on Twitch. The 49ers don't have a director of PR right now. So to me, you see all these things with Kyle Shanahan, this press conference, the press conference right before the draft.
And he's being forced into them. And they're like, you got to get out there and speak now. I mean, Bob Lang's gone. Bob Lang's over in Philly now. And they have not filled the position. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but that is worth discussing. And that's a good point.
Yeah. And I think specifically with those press conferences, it's not everything that we see in the press conference, but these little tiny things that you see throughout where you're like, why would you answer that type of question that way, Kyle? It just doesn't seem smart, even if you're trying to hide what you're saying.
Well, you could tell that coach has been flying off the handle a little bit right when it was that point about, I don't know if anybody's going to be alive on Sunday. That part, like, you could tell he's getting flustered. And now, well, I don't know if there's someone who can even, because it's not like Bob Lang or anybody like that is going to give you ways to answer or any sort of media training. What Bob Lang's job or the director is to pick out and tell you how many more questions are left, things like that. So, I mean, I guess they have to work on stuff behind the scenes, but it is a little bit different with the way that they've been answering questions. Coach seems flustered. The only time I saw him happy was right after the trade up. Right after the trade up, that guy was glowing from ear to ear because I think he felt, okay, now I bought myself this amount of time to stop, answering questions about quarterback. Now you know what we're doing. And so he was fine then. But whenever those tough questions get asked, he seems to be a little bit put off by them.
Yeah, and specifically with that Monday press conference before the draft, it looked like someone had just ran over his puppy an hour before. Like he went into that room. I mean, seriously, it looked like it looked like he wanted to draft Mac Jones, and the team looked at him, told him, that's never happening. And then they're like, okay, Kyle, time to go into the press conference, right? That's the type of stuff with this team where I do get a little uneasy. But, I think a little bit of this, again, is it's the off season. 49ers fans are going to read into a lot of stuff. But specifically with the injury thing, I think they just have to find a different way to acknowledge this. Because like you're saying, as the head coach, as the leader of the building, you can't have this constant nonchalant attitude. You have to at least seem like you're caring, even if that's not what you're doing. You have to give that perception, right?
Yeah, and again, you have to change up the answers. You have to vary the answers. You also have to be able to adapt when things are not working, change That's the thing. I mean, again, like I said, I'm not here to speculate on how to change it because I have no idea. Man, I ran and caught passes from Andrew in the Bay Area, for his second pro day, and I was hurting for 3 straight days. Clearly, I have no idea how strength and conditioning should go, anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's just really about the head coach taking charge. So, even if you say the wrong thing, say a different thing. That's how I feel. At least try to change that up. I mean, I don't even know if that makes sense. It's probably going to get me killed on the internet, but I mean, that's just how I feel. Just say something different.
Well, no, but you're right. You're right with what you're talking about, because you can't give the same answer to the same question over and over, especially in consecutive off seasons, just to have the one issue that 49ers fans are against. This is the only issue where 49ers fans are 100% like, what is the team doing? What are they going to do to acknowledge this, right? So to give this answer over and over of, oh, we're changing this and that, we're doing all this stuff. We changed our training staff in 2018. It gives the impression that Kyle doesn't care, which is unfortunate.
I mean, if you had to give out some character traits that you could see from Kyle Shanahan, confident, cocky, arrogant might be one of them. So I don't know if it's nonchalant. I think it's more just, hey, trust me, I got this. Don't worry about it. We'll get it done. So I mean, it's the type of thing I tell my daughter, like, I got this, relax. And I don't.
No. And it's scary when that's the head coach of your team talking about injuries, right? That's where we get really scared here. It's okay to have some of those answers for, the offensive questions, the stuff that we know Kyle for, but man, this attitude that he has with injuries, it's scary for 49ers.
I think he's fed up talking about it too.
Yeah, I think he is fed up talking about it. The next thing I did want to ask you about is, I think for Trey Lance, this season could go a number of different ways. But to you, how would you define a successful season for Trey Lance in year one?
So I don't think there's an easy way to answer this question. It's not a win total. It's not a numbers total. What I want to see is progression straight through the season. Even if you start a little slow, I want to see by the end of the year, because you are going to have your growing pains. This is the NFL. Nobody comes in and blows the league away in his first year. I mean, very rarely. But I think it's less about saying, okay, if Trey starts week 1, he's got to win 12 games for it to be successful, or he's got to throw for 4,500 yards and rush for. No, realistically, you want to see the guy comfortable. You don't want to see him rattled in situations. You want to see him respond in big moments. You want to see him push towards the right thing, because I think that is unfair for any quarterback at this point, even if that's the way it's being done now. Thank you, Josh Rosen and Kyler Murray, that in 1 year you have to already pick it up. I mean, for instance, pick up the Buffalo Bills. What if they gave up on Josh Allen after the second year? You just missed 1 year, and now Josh Allen's widely regarded as one of the best in the game. So it's not an easy answer, but the easiest way to put it is you want to make sure that you see steady progression, see a guy who is poised, see a guy who is leading the team, even if, let's say, they lose some close games. Let's say they lose some heartbreakers, but Trey is consistently leading them back in games, or leading big drives and in big moments, making big plays. That's all you could really ask for in year one, because then it only goes up from there. So you just want him to have an understanding of where he's going, what he's seeing, and you just want to make sure that you see progression week to week leading into the next season, so you can hang your hat on, look at all these good things that he's been doing and he can improve on, as instead of, man, he didn't really do anything right. Like, because there is a world where Trey Lance is like asked to throw maybe 12 passes and the 49ers still win games. Is that necessarily progressing? I wouldn't say so. You just want to make sure that he's doing things in certain situations and he looks the part and he's moving in the right direction. So that's the way that I would consider a successful season.
And I'm glad you put it that way, because I think that's exactly how I thought about this question too. The key word is progression. I don't think it matters necessarily how Trey starts in the NFL. I think it matters how he looks throughout the entire season and what his start to finish looks like. To me, that's the really important thing. If we see just incremental improvement with Trey, whether it's the little things over and over, to where by the end of the season, Trey looks like a really confident quarterback. I think the worst case scenario for Trey is a Tua situation, right? I think that's the situation every team is trying to avoid with a young rookie quarterback right now. And I think the other thing I would consider successful with Trey from a different aspect is that if he's able to go in there and assert himself as an athlete, as a top tier elite NFL athlete, even if he isn't fully playing yet and it's still the Jimmy Garoppolo experience, that would give fans a lot of, goodwill, and that would make them feel very confident about him moving forward. So, I took this two ways. I think if he's playing, like you mentioned perfectly, progression is key. It doesn't matter where he starts. It matters how better he gets throughout the whole season, how he takes in the offense, and just seeing his understanding improve over the course of the season. But if he's going to be in a Taysom Hill type package, right, which I don't think he exactly would be, but if it's that sort of thing, right, he just needs to assert himself as a very good elite athlete in the NFL if he's not going to be getting those heavy passing reps.
I suspect that we'll see Trey a little bit in red zone situations, similar to how Cap was used during the Alex Smith years. And it's pretty smart to do things like that because those are concepts that you're going to run. If you're talking about straight up bootlegs to, or anything like that, those are things that you're going to run when he's the starter. So why not at this point? So I agree with you there. And I don't know, me, I'm not I like numbers. I like film better. So I want to see it on film. I want to see you, even if your guy drops a pass or even if the throw's off a little bit, you got to the right read, you read the defense the correct way, and you made the right decision. That other stuff will come with time. And that's it. It's all about progression. It's all about understanding everything that you're seeing. And it's all about how are you going to respond when things are rough. Everybody's good when they're up 31-0 and everything's going good. I don't learn much about guys when you're winning. I learn way more about when things are down and how you're moving. So,
yeah. And I'm glad Zach brought this up.
There he is.
Listen, the red zone thing, I feel like it's something to where the 49ers haven't been bad in the red zone, right? But if you watch the film and watch what they do, they could have had so many more opportunities where they could score and really take advantage of the red zone. So to me, that's the thing where I think the 49ers should be some of the 5 best teams, some of the 10 best teams in the league at this sort of thing. I mean, I think they should be.
The 49ers red zone weapon is no longer on his team. That was Kendrick Bourne.
He isn't. And I will say, and this will kind of lead into the next topic, I think Brandon Ayuk is going to be getting a lot of that sort of those catches and that sort of stuff. And he'll be more involved in the red zone. And you know what? Let's just switch to that topic because I think this is really interesting to talk about. And I think there are 49ers fans who would be split on this kind of issue. So for you, Jason, which 2 Niners do you think will finish with the most targets by the end of the season?
I'm going to say the easiest answer is Kittle and Ayuk. Kittle's is still the number 1 pass catcher on this team. Brandon Ayuk is the Z receiver on this team. No questions asked. With Deebo Samuel, his pass attempts his targets are going to come a lot on those push passes, on those jet sweeps. Those aren't even technically targets. Those throws behind the line as well. Like Deebo, I think Deebo is more than a gadget player, but that's how he's deployed in this offense. So for me, the other thing is too, and I don't want to talk about this, and I don't want to put this out in the realm, but Deebo tends to miss time, so it's hard for me to count on him to be one of the top 2 targets on this team. And I mean, Kittle misses time, Ayuk missed time, so they all have those concerns. But I'm going to speak it into the world that all 3 of them are going to be healthy all year. But I've got Kittle 1, and I've got Ayuk 2, just because Ayuk, what he did last year, and I don't know if you're familiar, I posted a little bit of his reception perception stuff by Matt Harmon. He won on basically every single route. His route tree is incredible.
It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm sorry, but just what Brandon Ayuk was doing, looking at that route tree that you were talking about, Ayuk can win in every part of the field. And I actually did a film breakdown for Brandon Ayuk Tuesday this week with Bay Area Baller.
Nice.
The thing that I noticed with him more than anything when I watch all the good plays after the good plays, it's not like he's doing it against just zone or just man, right? It seems like every single time he's challenged or he has to do something different, even within his normal role of a receiver, he excels. I feel like in man, I don't think there's anyone who can really cover Brandon Ayuk one-on-one for sure. I mean, I just don't think there is. And even watching him in zone, which is where I feel like people doubted him a little more, right? He's still able to find the soft spots of the zone, angle his body, and use his athleticism and body control in a way to where he doesn't need to be at the exact spot. And with all the bad passes that he was getting thrown his way in this past season, he really had to adjust mid catch, right? I think I went over this catch. It was the deep post versus Seattle where Nick Mullins, it's like a 35-yard deep post. he has green grass in front of him, and Brandon Ayuk has to stop and get the ball, right? So when I'm looking at the players who should finish with the 2 most targets on this team, it's got to be Ayuk and Kittle. I think with Debo, like you're saying, it's not even gadget is the right word. It's just you want to use him as a utility type of player where you use him in all different kinds of things where he's a threat because you don't know what he's going to be doing out of the backfield, right? So to me, that probably diminishes his targets. And then when I think about Trey Lance and the future of the 49ers, I think that Brandon Ayuk his role is only going to increase with this team because when I was looking at his PFF breakdown for his deep routes, I believe he only had like 3 catches past 20 yards or something crazy, right?
I can name 2 of them off the top of my head. One is the New England game that probably should have been a tutty if it was placed just a little bit further. The Bills game, Nick Mullins actually chucked the ball downfield and he had to turn his body the other way to make sure he got that. The third one, I'm not fully certain which one.
You know what the third one is? It's that Seattle play I just brought up.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is. So it's those 3 plays with Brandon Ayuk. I don't think any of those plays are really outside the numbers type of throws where, I mean, that's the stuff when I believe when you brought this up on Twitter. I mean, Ayuk does better than almost anyone in the league at those outside routes, those to the sideline, right? Mm-hmm. He just seems to excel in that part of the field.
And his press percentile in success rate, I believe, the way that Matt Harmon charted it was in the upper 80s, if not 90s, wow. Which means at the top of the league. And his methodology in their first few years, he said that he lands in a tier of Stephon Diggs, Calvin Ridley, Allen Robinson. That is all you really need to know because those are 3 very good, if not elite receivers in this league.
Yeah, and I think I just want to get back to this point specifically. I think he's going to be taking on that Kendrick Bourne, that Jordan Reed role that we're going to see disappear from this team. I think what 49ers fans need to realize is they're losing a lot of targets from last year's team. I mean, really, Jerick McKinnon had a ton of targets. Jeff Wilson Jr., who's not going to be available at the beginning of the season, had a lot of targets. I think for Brandon Ayuk, he was getting targeted about 8 times a game last year. That number should be around there. If not, it should be more. To me, I think they just need to figure out different ways to get the ball in his hands because I feel like, you know, and the one play that really stuck out to me with Brandon Ayuk was, I'm forgetting, I think it was against New England, but you can go back and watch my video to see specifically. But it's this play where it's a Jerick McKinnon handoff and he fumbles the ball, right? He drops the ball and Brandon Ayuk is coming in on an end around almost and he scoops it up. And instead of being like a 12-yard loss or a fumble and the other team's advantage, Brandon Ayuk carried it for like 8 yards, right? So it's the kind of stuff I see with him to where I'm like, we need to get him involved in the punt return, in the kick return. He needs to get the ball behind the line of scrimmage more. We need to get him the ball outside the numbers more. I don't see where this guy's role stops. I think if anything, it just needs to be expanded, and especially with the Trey Lance offense. I think that's obvious to me. You know,
I think it's a great point that you bring up because here's another thing that I jumped on with Ayuk immediately. You know, you can hear whatever you hear out of training camp. Game 1 that he played against the Giants, something about him was, I'm the man, and I'm here now, and you got to get me the ball. I think he played his first game against the Jets, but the Giants game was when everybody was down and he was incredible in that game. And that's when you kind of look at him and you say, okay, this is the man. But I wanted to talk to you real quick about his role expanding. So you have to remember a lot of what happened last year. Guys were used like Jerick McKinnon. You know, I love to joke about McKinnon from the Wildcat. That's my favorite play in the world. But he was used out of necessity. Yeah. You know, Brandon Ayuk was being targeted 8, 9, 10 times a game. Debo was hurt. Kittle was hurt. He had to be used that way.
Richie James I think Jr. was hurt. I mean,
right. So while I think 8 is totally fair, if this offense is completely full with Kittle and him, you might see that just dial back a little bit because you still have to get everybody else involved as well too. Now, I'm agreeing with you though. I want more Brandon Ayuk touches. I do. You know, I'm a little skittish on the whole punt kick return. I'm just being paranoid. You know, but there is no correlation to kick returns or punt returns and injuries. It's just something that people have made up as a way to say, no, don't do it. But he was really good at it at Arizona State. So if this offense is humming and everybody's available, Wilson, Mostert, you know, Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, it's going to be hard to just continue to get him the ball unless they have a mismatch that they're just completely exploiting, which happens. There's games where George Kittle only gets 4 targets because Kyle Shanahan knows where to attack. So I think that 8 target range or that 8 touch range is really good as long as they're down the field. But I agree with you in the same way that if you blink your eyes at times, and I think it's the Saints game, they did it in the Cowboys game, they did it in New England, those little push passes to Ayuk, you almost say, man, is that Debo?
And that's the thing where I think Brandon Ayuk really is going to set himself up for success in the Shanahan offense. I feel like he can almost do 90 to 95% of what Debo does, but then he has all these other extra things that you look for in your star stud receiver, right? Mm-hmm. And that to me is what's going to make him the number one receiver on the Niners for the next 10 years, I think. I really think this kid is special, and he has the type of talent to me to where I think he can be a top 10 guy. Just looking at the last year wide receiver class, I think the only guy who's definitively better than him is probably Justin Jefferson.
CeeDee Lamb is really good, Ben. I mean, look, I know we hate the Cowboys, but CeeDee Lamb's really, really, really good. I'll tell you another thing too. Don't discount Jerry Jeudy. I found a stat. I believe PFF put it out. I think he led the league with uncatchable targets of 20. Yes, he had the drops. Yes, he was learning the game, but he's still winning on his routes. So it's going to be a stacked receiver class. And I agree with you. There is a world where Brandon Ayuk is a 10 top 10 guy. Absolutely. And it can only go up from here. So I just think that finally, after so many receivers, Kyle hit his right guy. And I'll say this, I'll go out on a bit of a limb. And I've been saying this, so it's nothing that never left my mouth before. But I think Brandon Ayuk is the best receiver the 49ers have had since Terrell Owens. I really don't have a good reason why you could put anybody over him even after one season. Not Michael Crabtree.
I don't have any pushback for you either. I mean, right. Hey, listen, I love Anquan Bolden because I'm an FSU guy, right? But hey, listen, I don't think there's anyone who's been as talented as Ayuk has been than a guy like.
All right, so I should take that back. So Bolden was the last receiver the 49ers have 1,000-yard season. So I'll take that back, okay? Anquan Bolden. But what I meant was fully grown 49er wide receivers.
Right.
Terrell Owens was drafted, so yeah. I think that. So if we're doing just best receivers, then okay, Bolden, and after Bolden, I think it's Ayuk. It's over Michael Crabtree, over any of those other guys, in my opinion, after one season. Might be a hot take, but that's how I'm feeling. There you go.
That is high. I mean, what you're saying, it's high praise, but I think really the exciting thing with Ayuk, and I'll just end this topic right here with this, is that he fits that classic receiver role that 49ers fans have been clamoring for. Like you said, he's that Z receiver, but even with the 49ers last year, he was an X. I mean, really, he was almost a true X receiver with this team. So he's shown that ability to be that dominant wide receiver one type of guy that you're talking about, like with that Giants game specifically, right? I mean, that stuck right when you said that. I remember that game exactly because it seemed like he just had so much confidence about him. So where it's something we hadn't seen out of all those wide receivers that Kyle had drafted until that point. I mean,
and the 49ers were hanging on by a thread with who they had to put out there. So Ayuk really seized his moment right then. That's what I was really impressed with. Okay, you could be a rookie, come in and say, everybody's banged up. What am I going to do? Nah, I'm the man. Give me the ball. Let's cook. And that's really what I liked about him when I first saw him play against the Giants.
Wait, Jason, you're telling me that River Craycraft isn't pushing him for targets? I mean,
well,
what about Mohamed Sanu?
Apparently Mohamed Sanu is. I was just about to say that. Yeah, I mean, the 49ers have a lot of options at wide receiver 3.
They have a crowded wide receiver room.
So, but here's the thing. Right now, they don't really run a lot of wide receiver 3 sets. If all was said and done, they wanted to run 3 receivers, it would probably be Kittle in the slot with either Debo outside and Ayuk outside. So it's not something that's major. The reason that I harp on wide receiver 3 and trying to bring in someone who's more reliable is you are one injury away from being in that boat of, I hope Jalen Hurd's ready to go. I hope River Craycraft can help. I hope Richie James can help. I hope Juwan Jennings is there. I hope Mohamed Sanu can help. So it's not that I'm doubting any of them because anything can happen, and those guys could prove me wrong and just come right out and just play very well when their numbers called. But I'm the type of guy that instead of what I can predict, I kind of want to go back to stuff that I know. There's plenty of receivers that I know have succeeded in this league, have played, that could be out there. So that's really where I'm at with wide receiver 3. But until that happens, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And, I believe in putting out the best 11. Doesn't matter. So if the 49ers got Julio Jones and they didn't run 3 wide receiver sets, you probably bet your ass they're going to be running a lot of 3 wide receiver sets because it's Julio. Yeah, so it's not like you just say, sorry, Julio, You're not going to be out there on 3 wide receiver sets.
It's like slow down, Julio. We run 2 receiver sets. We're gonna, Debo's gonna take a playoff. Ayuk's gonna take a playoff. It's like no. Get your best guys out there, right?
You run your personnel based on what you have, and that's been my contention with. Oh, they don't run 3 wide receiver sets. They never really had 3 wide receivers that would attack you in a way that you'd be nervous about. So.
And if you wonder why we run all these New England concepts now, it's because of the personnel, right? It's because Jimmy Garoppolo is the quarterback standing back there.
Good point.
For the next topic, though, we were going to talk about Kyle's press conference, but I feel like we covered that pretty in depth already. The next thing I did want to ask you about, though, is there one 49er that you're kind of looking up and down the roster who you think is going to have a breakout season this upcoming season?
Absolutely. Javon Kinlaw.
Yeah.
It's Javon Kinlaw's time. So, unfortunately, this fan base had an issue with the way that they were evaluating him. And what I mean by that is when you see DeForest Buckner get traded and you see them move to 12 to get a guy to replace him, a lot of fans got it in their mind that they were going to get someone who was Buckner. Now, you have to remember, Buckner flashed in the beginning, but Buckner wasn't this Buckner when he first started. Everybody starts somewhere else. So I always thought that was kind of unfair with Kinlaw coming out. He was already off the – and then you have to remember there's that crowd too, like me, that wanted them to take a wide receiver at 12. CeeDee Lamb was on the board.
Oh, and just real quick, I'll let you go in a sec. I just wanted to say this, though, because you reminded me. I lost my mind when the Cowboys drafted CeeDee Lamb. I fell off my couch, man. I was more disappointed with the 49ers not taking a guy than, like I'm more of a newer 49ers fan, but that was, like, to me, I fell off my couch at that point.
Dude, I have a live reaction video of me seeing the pick come through with Javon Kinlaw, and I'm a big wide receiver guy. So Judy was on the board, CeeDee Lamb was on the board, and I'm like, oh my God. Even if I wrote an article that entire offseason about I want Henry Ruggs as the pick so he can open up and unlock some other things, when I saw Javon Kinlaw come across, I was like, what is that? Why again? But either way, I had the chance to sit back and think about it. And when they got Brandon Ayuk, I'm like, okay, now, that's why you're paid to do what you do, and I'm just a guy. But I think it's Javon Kinlaw. And so the problem is that the fan base wanted him to be Buckner right away. Not everybody in the fan base. There are plenty of level-headed, very smart 49ers fans. It's not a large section of them. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Jason, when you make that trade and you trade essentially just trade him for that pick, and you take the guy at the same position, it does place a certain amount of expectation on a guy that you have to anticipate.
Like I was going to say, there's not a large section of unreasonable 49er fans. It's not a large. For the most part, 49er fans are very smart. They're very in tune with what's going on. So it wasn't a large amount of people that were saying it, but you could see those things. And I think I saw some beat writers talking about, kind of that same thing. Okay, so the thing was you let Buckner go, you sign Armstead, you sign Jimmy Ward, and you got Kinlaw. Well, I love Buckner, but Jimmy Ward is almost in my mind irreplaceable.
Yeah.
Eric Armstead was played out of position this entire season, and if you want to point to his money as a reason why he should be playing better out of position, I don't know what to tell you. That doesn't really make sense. And then Kinlaw comes in as a rookie. Unfortunately, he gets hurt at the end of the year, right? And people just automatically think, okay, here's this guy. He's going to be like blowing quarterbacks up. Took him a little while to get his footing. Last year was really funky with the offseason. For as much as we talk about the 3 guys that the 49ers have lost in OTAs, at this time they already had 5 people down.
That's so
true. And there were no sort of organized team activities. And how many guys were lost in Nashville? Deebo Samuel broke his foot in Nashville. Richie James broke his wrist in Nashville. So
it's like, stop working out in Nashville, guys, for God's sake. I mean,
it's like Bruce Arians said. What did he say? He's like, hey, come work out at the facility. If you get hurt, you're at least here, so you get paid. But anyway, so it's Javon Kinlaw for me. And why? Think about this. Bosa's back. Maybe D Ford is going to be there. Armstead's there. Javon Kinlaw is going to get to his fair share of one-on-ones. From all things that I've heard about his knee, he does have a knee issue, which is another thing that fans were put off about, oh my God, here we go again with another knee injury. His knee feels like it's cleaned up from everything that we're hearing. High praise from D'Amico Ryans. I think that when he gets those one-on-ones, he was great as a run stuffer. That Giants game, he blew up so many runs in that game. I know Saquon Barkley wasn't in that game. 49ers legend Wayne Gallman started for them. But he was blowing things up, throwing guys out of the way. And so if he wasn't getting to the quarterback and that's what you expected, then you might be disappointed. But you have to just, again, I'm not going to put a number to his stats or anything like that in his first year. I just want to see things that I could point out and I could see, and then you can see it with Kinlaw. So now when you talk about that sort of pressure, not being able to have two guys come chip him, you have to allocate more things to maybe D Ford, maybe Nick Bosa, maybe Ebukam, maybe Armstead. I think that Javon Kinlaw is in prime position to break out this year, and it would be a huge boost to this defense and put their defensive line depth in a better spot, I feel like, of 2019. Because if you look at it and all those guys play, you're forgetting Mo Hurst, Kerr, Gibbons is back. There's a lot of really good players on this line that are depth worthy, and I just think that Javon Kinlaw is the guy that takes the step this year, and he starts to show you why the team was so confident in taking him, or not confident that they targeted him at 12.
And I think the other thing that's really going to help him this year, something I hung on to with what D'Amico said in his first press conference, which is that he expected the 49ers to essentially be more exotic and have different kinds of looks with their blitzes and with their pressure, right? So when I hear that, to me, that lights up. That's going to light it up for a guy like Javon Kinlaw, right? Who's just going to make things easier and easier for him when you create so much chaos with the defense like that. So I'm in total agreement with you. I think Javon Kinlaw is a breakout candidate. Going back to something you were saying, though, it's not going to be about the stats for him. It's going to be about that look on the field, how he impacts the team. And I think one of the things that him and Armstead are going to be able to do so well for this team is keep quarterbacks in the pocket and create pressure that kind of way, right? To where they can contain guys like Russell Wilson, like Kyler Murray, especially when you add Samson Ebukam to your team, right? So it's all these things to me that add up, that shows that they're really trying to make a concerted effort to get pressure in multiple different types of ways and have different answers for the different types of quarterbacks that they have to face. Because, the NFC West is loaded, but you're going to face your pocket passers of the world, right? You're going to face your statue quarterbacks. So you need to be prepared for those kinds of things.
I think they kind of tipped you off in the draft, when they drafted Ambry Thomas, Lenore, those guys. They feel like press guys, press man, kind of tipped you off. And then I really point to Jaquiski Tartt's press conference after he signed. I hope D'Amico blitzes me 12 times. Where'd you get that from? You didn't just pull that out of thin air. When you were considering coming back to the 49ers, you asked what your role would be, and that kind of tipped me off right there. And honestly, last year, what Robert Saleh had to do to generate pressure kind of leaves breadcrumbs for D'Amico Ryans to use. I wrote an article about Jimmy Ward and how good Robert Saleh was last year, because I still maintain that Robert Saleh's best job was last year and not 2019. So you
look at the talent he had from one season to the other, and you look at the numbers that the team finished with. I don't think you can come to any other conclusion other than Robert Saleh's best season was 2020.
And the best thing that he did is he used what was on film against the opponents. Okay, so if he shows K1 at the line with Jimmy Ward next to him, if I'm a quarterback and I've seen what they've done the entire time that K1's been here, K1's coming, Jimmy's going to drop into coverage, so I got to watch out for that. No, you send Jimmy and you drop K1 in the coverage now, and it confuses you. So that's what I thought he did, and that was game one. He still had Bosa. Yeah. Ford played in that game. So that kind of shows you, and they moved away from straight up cover 3 last year to much more man's, quarters, and you saw it at the end of the season with Akilla Weatherspoon. So I'm going to see, I thought we were going to see a lot more man and definitely a lot more blitzing. You have guys that are fast at a linebacker. Ebukam is fast, but I would suspect that you're going to see a lot more of the safeties in the box, Jimmy, Kwaski, getting after the quarterback and just creating havoc and having confidence on the back end that you can cover while you take those guys out of the secondary. So, I mean, it kind of just was all there when you look at how they drafted, what they did last year. Kind of the personnel, too, tipped it off. And, I was happy to hear D'Amico say that, because I think that sometimes it's needed. You can't just sit back and play cover 3 the entire game.
No, you can't. And for me, for my breakout candidate, Javon was the guy that stuck out to me on defense. I agree with you. I think that's kind of the obvious candidate on that side.
It is. I always take the easy answers.
No, it's fine. I honestly, that's the answer I would have gone with if I didn't end up going with who I went with, which is Ross Dwelly. And I'm not just saying that because this is
Grant, are you in here? Grant, did he tell you to say that?
No. But let me put it to you this way, Jason.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, he played 16 games, didn't miss a single game. He only got 24 targets last season and 19 catches. That's an issue. So to me, when I'm looking at all the other targets on the team, right, I talked about this earlier, Kendrick Bourne and Jordan Reed. Those are two guys where Ross Dwelly is going to be filling that type of role almost immediately. You know, I forgot the tight end that they signed earlier this offseason. I'm trying to remember who it was.
Michael Pruitt?
Michael Pruitt. He was more of a blocking tight end, right? And to me, that says that they don't have as much confidence in a guy like Charlie Warner, right? Who they brought in to be more of their blocker, right? But last season, they did the opposite. They brought in Jordan Reed, who's more of a pass catcher, to be ahead of a guy like Ross Dwelly. So to me, when they don't address wide receiver 3 like some people thought they would, and when they don't sign another pass catching tight end, those targets have to go somewhere. I mean, the team is going to have to pass the ball in some type of way. So I think he's going to get more involved in the offense. I think that's the big thing.
I like that call because it seems that Kyle wants to run 2 tight ends. There's no reason for you to bring Jordan Reed in. I think the idea in the beginning we all got excited for was how do you stop Kittle and Jordan Reed? And from all accounts, no matter what, when it came to Jordan Reed at camp, talked to some players, they said Jordan Reed was uncoverable, even at that state, and he retired this year. So I think that they do want to run those things as well, too. So your point about Michael Pruitt, I don't know if anybody remembers, Levine Toilolo spent a lot of time on his roster because he's just a blocking tight end. They want to go heavy. Sometimes they want to go heavy and send guys out on play action, things like that. But if you're looking at the pass catchers on this roster, it's only Kittle and Dwelly. It's not, and Michael Pruitt and Warner are primarily blockers, but I think you're absolutely right. With the Pruitt signing, what does that say about Charlie Warner, who was supposed to be brought in and be an absolute tank in blocking as well? Is it either just straight up depth or are you not believing in him? We'll see. We will see, because Tennessee used him in the same exact role, blocking, and then they would sneak him out in the red zone and hit him with an easy touchdown. Well, not an easy touchdown. The one that he had in Denver was like this amazing catch that he made, but it was pretty much just him fake blocking and going up and just making a catch. So, yeah, I think it tells you a lot about what they think about the tight end position, and I really believe that Kyle wants to run 2 tight ends. Absolutely. I mean, the Zach Ertz stuff is coming from fans, but if he was in better shape as far as where he is in his career, they probably would have looked at that a lot more, but I just don't think that they will.
Well, and considering that the latest tight end they've been connected to is Delaney Walker, it doesn't seem like anyone is really going to be stepping on Ross Dwelly's toes. It seems like something they would have addressed at this point in the offseason. First of all, shout out to or where's Amin at? Amin the Dream. Shout out Amin the Dream. I love this guy. What's up, Amin the Dream?
I've had a lot of cool moments doing this. When Amin the Dream followed me back, I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I made it.
No, listen, Amin, he's my guy. And you know what, Amin, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. I've been doing a lot of streams this week. And hey, for everyone enjoying this, check me out tomorrow. I'll have Vish on my channel tomorrow and Blake from Vish and Blake Sports. I got exciting stuff coming up. So this isn't the end of anything. I'm going to be pushing out tons of content.
Nice.
But the next thing I wanted to get to, and we're getting to our last few topics here. And actually, you know what? I think if you're okay with it, I'll address this first.
Go for it.
I want to ask you: is there one position you're looking at that the team just needs to desperately address? And when I think about this, one thing sticks out almost immediately, which is defensive end. I feel like they could use another speed rusher, right? But at the same time, they made signings, like you said, some of those smaller signings, some of those not big name defensive line type of guys, to where they'll have the rotations for that kind of stuff. They'll be able to do all kinds of different stuff. And with all the exotic stuff like we've been talking about, they're not going to have to rely on those true edge guys as much. So when I think about it that way, cornerback, what the hell is this team doing at cornerback? I don't understand it, Jason. Explain this to me. They haven't drafted a cornerback higher than pick 66 in this entire regime. That was Akella Witherspoon. He's not even on the team anymore, right? So, man, the one thing I feel like teams need to get their heads around in the NFL is that, listen, pressure is great. And if you create pressure, it makes it harder for quarterbacks, right? But if you can't cover guys like the 49ers learned in the Super Bowl, it doesn't matter about the pressure. It doesn't matter if Nick Bosa is hanging on your back. It doesn't matter Tyreek Hill is 10 yards past the cornerback who's trying to cover him. So to me, I don't understand the philosophy of teams that are like, oh, we have enough cornerbacks, we're fine at that position. To me, I think every team should just be trying to get more and more cornerbacks. Like I look at the Dolphins and the Patriots as prime examples of this, where they show you that it doesn't matter how they get pressure. when they cover guys, teams can't pass the ball against them. So to me, when I look up and down the Niners roster, if they get one injury to any of their two starting cornerbacks, right, for Jason Verrett or for Emmanuel Mosley, it's almost season over at that point, or playoff hopes over, because then you're relying on the Ambry Thomases of the world or the Diamador Lenores of the world, right, to come in and play a role for you, to where you don't want to put those guys in a position, right? I mean, even with Ambry Thomas, he was a pick 102. And this was funny when I looked at this with Grant, and specifically I talked about this with him on my stream a few weeks ago. The top 10 paid corners in the NFL, Jason, 7 of them first-round picks. The next 3, all second-round picks, with only one guy being picked after like pick 38. So when the team is like, oh, we're fine at cornerback, we can just, draft guys in the hundreds in the 3rd and the 5th round, they're addressing the issue, but they're not really addressing the issue.
I mean, you stole my answer. I've been scared to death. I've been trying to pound the table for AJ Boye, Steven Nelson's out there. And again, it's nothing against Ambry Thomas, Lenore, anything like that, or Dante Johnson, any of those guys. It's just that you got to hope, knock on wood, God forbid, because I love the journey. I love the player. Jason Verrett's last season is the new rule and not the exception to how his career has gone. Emmanuel Mosley is fine, very solid, not equipped to stop number ones. You saw what happened when he had to guard Devontae Adams. You saw what happened when he had to go get DK Metcalf at times. So, yes, cornerback would have been my answer as well. Then, you find yourself in a position in a Miami game where you have to pick poor Brian Allen off of the practice squad. And I'm not even trying to clown him. It's because if I was a guy who wasn't even – I've taken all my snaps as special teams and I profile as a cornerback, and then you say, all right, get in an NFL game. If I was on the other side, I would just say throw at that guy until he proves that he can't. So I'm not trying to even get upset with Brian Allen. And again, I can't make fun of any NFL player. They're in the NFL. No. Doesn't matter. But
I think the point stands is you can't have enough good corners. Like, right. I don't understand these teams who think they're just okay at corner. You look at a team like the Broncos, right? I mean, their secondary is loaded, and they have guys who can cover people all over the field. And with the way that the NFL is going, with the way that passing is going in the NFL, with the way they're changing the rules in the NFL, passing is so important on defense. And I just want to get back to something I was saying earlier. The pressure isn't going to matter that the 49ers are creating if they don't cover the wide receivers that are on the field. I mean, it doesn't matter if it takes you 2.5 seconds to get to the quarterback if every single wide receiver has 5 yards of separation, right?
It's me again being the person who wants to have names that I can rely on, people that I know. You're betting on Ambry Thomas profiles as somebody who's a bit of a developmental player. For when Lenore was drafted, people thought that there's the K'Wan Williams replacement. So that means that you think that he's primarily slot. Clearly, it doesn't look like that, which the video wound up costing them their developmental week. But it clearly didn't look like that. But again, reps on 7-on-7. And NFL games. So let's just say doomsday. This is doomsday right here for you. Right. The 49ers roll into Tennessee. They need a big win in Tennessee. Verrett's injured. Mosley's got to guard either A.J. Brown or Julio Jones. That's what I'm talking about right there. Those sort of games, those sort of things. So it's more just about hoping that what Jason Verrett did last year is the new rule. And just hoping that this cornerback room does not sustain any injuries, because you don't want to put guys in bad positions where that can also stunt their development and have people pile on. Look, it took Jimmy Ward 7 years before people actually even understood how good he was. And it took him fighting through everyone criticizing him for his entire time here before they finally understood how talented he is. So that's just an example of sometimes guys get put in situations that are wrong, and when they don't perform, people turn on them, not the fan base, the media.
Yeah.
It's just, honestly, you really have to be prepared for everything. So I like the drafting of Ambry Thomas. I like the drafting of Lenore, but like you said, they're not high picks. You're just hoping that you could turn them into something. But as far as names you can rely on in case something happens, gets very thin after Emmanuel Mosley. Then you're talking about Tim Harris, Dante Johnson, those sort of guys. Yeah, I mean, nothing against them. It's just you got to show us now. And you don't want to have them try to figure it out during a game, especially if the game's important.
Yeah, And just with this team, I mean, the biggest investment that this regime has even made in the cornerback position is a guy like Richard Sherman, right? So that just goes to show you how much they value the position.
And
They don't really.
and even when they brought Sherman in, they brought Verrett in to just as a like, oh, let's just see what happens. And look, so it's the problem is, and Grant brought it up on his show too, so I'm not gonna act like it's my point. When you hit on Jason Verrett, you start to think, let's just bring in somebody else who's been injured and we'll fix it. Nah, can't really do that. So in the way that Trent Baalke was drafting people at discounts because they were injured, the 49ers have been bringing in free agents not off the street, free agents who have injuries, and sometimes even paying them a little bit too much, as we saw with Jerick McKinnon. So
yeah, well, and I think especially like it'd be different if this team had that attitude with a position like defensive line or offensive line where they take so many guys, where they have so many shots that they don't need to rely on those guys that we're talking about who are end of the roster type of guys. But when you do it at the cornerback position and you rely on that to be the success of your team, I mean, you're just asking for trouble, in my opinion. I think this is one of the worst secondaries in the league when you consider the injuries. I mean, specifically at the cornerback position.
Just corner, I think safety they're pretty well set, even with unfortunately Tarvarius Moore injury. Right. But Ward and Tart, I'm not worried about that. Marcel Harris is still there. Hufanga's there. That I feel way better about than I do. So it's not the secondary for me; it's the cornerback room for me.
Yeah, and I think I said that wrong, but you're right. With corner, it's just like I just don't understand the attitude this team has. It's like Kyle's nonchalant attitude, like we were talking about, which I hate to keep saying that, but
so in the same breath, it kind of leads you to what we were talking about with D'Amico. Now you're gonna have to generate pressure and make sure that you get to the quarterback just in case. You don't want guys out there trying to cover for 3, 4, 5 seconds because that's impossible. Even the best cornerbacks can't do it. So I think they understand that as well.
Yeah,
let's just see how it goes.
Yeah, and if they're going to be doing that, they just have to be, I think my point is, willing to invest in the position. If it's going to take a big name free agent or a trade that they have to do for, mid-round pick like they did with Emmanuel Sanders, do something like that. But they need to find some sort of just solution at the position. And I just want to end this on this topic. When I was looking at our salary cap table before the stream I did with Grant, only 2 of the starting secondary guys out of the 2 safeties and 3 corners are signed for next year. And then beyond that, in 2023, none of those guys are on the roster. So
it's just Ward. Harris isn't under contract. Unfortunately, T. Moore was in his contract year. Tart signed a 1-year deal to prove that he can play 16, 17 games, and he wants to get back out there next year and test the market and see what he can get. So it's really just Jimmy Ward and like Hufanga.
Yeah. And with Jason Verrett, this team is just like, I think even if the season goes really well for him, then you have another problem because guess what? You have to pay the guy. You have to figure out how to fit him under your salary cap table. So to me,
at least the cap goes up.
That's the thing. That's the only thing where I think they won't get nailed as much for that kind of stuff. But it's just risky to me what they're doing at the corner position.
Let's just hope they know what they're doing, so we don't have to see Brian Allen out there. I'm sorry. See, I didn't mean to do that. I don't want to be like that and just talk about a player like that.
But you're right. You're right. Hey, shout out Brian Allen. But seriously,
yeah, man, I'm sorry.
You shouldn't be put in that position in the first place.
Not at all.
We're saying, Brian.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, we don't blame you. 49ers fans do not put blame on you.
Nope.
I want to end on this last topic, though. And this is going to be a little more positive, and this is more of a big picture outlook sort of thing. How high should 49ers fans' expectations be for the next 2-3 years?
I've maintained that even with Jimmy Garoppolo as the quarterback, this team can win 12 games barring catastrophic injuries, which we hope haven't already started. The roster's just loaded. It's a stacked roster. That the coaching staff is going to put you in good positions. Last year, how many games could the 49ers have won if they didn't throw 4 interceptions and maybe just threw 2, maybe just threw 3, maybe threw 1? Like, don't throw 4, throw 2. You could probably win games like that. The defense was good enough, even with all the injuries, and the offense, even without a quarterback and its regular pieces, were regularly in ball games. Sure, Buffalo took them to the shed. Sure, the Cowboys kind of, took them down. But that Saints game, they're right in. There's plenty of other games that the Arizona game, they played their worst game of the year, that first the first game of the season. So many games that you look at, few plays here, few plays there, they win the game. So I think that's all speaking to the culture and the coaches, even though they had guys like even the guys that they brought in to replace other guys got hurt. Ziggy Ansah, Oh, we signed him. We brought him in. First game, hurt, injured, done for the season. Again, when I said that it can't happen again, is because mathematically it's almost impossible for it to happen again. It is. So for the next 2 to 3 years, that's a really interesting discussion, Ben, because who's the quarterback in 2-3 years? What happens this year? I think we know that Trey Lance is going to be the quarterback. I'd be shocked if it was the second year of Jimmy Garoppolo and they still didn't go to Trey.
You don't think they're going to Josh Rosen?
I think they're going to Nate Sudfeld.
No. Hey, wait, with Josh Johnson, he might be off the team right now, but maybe we can
still give him
some run. He'll be back. He's going to be just reaching his peak by the time Trey Lance is ready. I mean, that's the biggest threat.
If I can make one prediction that I know for a fact is coming true, some point in the season, Dante Johnson and Josh Johnson will both be on this roster at the same time, and they will always find their way onto this roster. But I think it's interesting with the quarterback position. So with Lance, I don't suspect. So if Jimmy Garoppolo plays, let's say they win 10, 11 games, maybe even get bounced in the first round, I think that's enough to up his trade stock. I think you got to move him at that point because he still would be a starting quarterback, which is highly valuable in this league. I keep saying the same thing over and over. You don't have to be a top 10 guy to be valuable in this league. A starting quarterback who is solid and can win games and stay on the field is very valuable. And if Jimmy Garoppolo can shed that narrative and play anywhere like he did in 2019, it means two things. One, the 49ers are going to win games. And two, his trade value is going to be there, so then you could turn it over to Trey. Here's the dichotomy, though, of this, and this is the part that I struggle with, and I'm still struggling with this to this day, Ben.
Yeah.
Trey Lance hasn't played in a year. He's not going to play in another year. Is that going to be how you develop him? That's the part that I get nervous about. So I understand the plan. I understand exactly what you're doing. Let Jimmy go out there. This roster is ready to compete. This fan base wants you to compete, especially after what happened last year coming off of 2019. Completely get that. Is there a world where that does more damage to Trey Lance than it does help Trey Lance? And that's what gets me nervous, right? I almost want Trey to get in there, get his feet wet, start seeing the speed of the game, start having the growing pains so you can get through it. But this fan base wants to win. So I think it's the right plan to do the Jimmy Garoppolo thing. I just fear that the long-term effects might be worse. I don't think that this is likely. It's not likely. It's just a fear that I have in my head because I'm worried about everything.
And it's a super valid fear. You know, I think with the Tua Tagovailoa situation, I think that's what 49ers fans should be worried about more than anything is we get in a situation where Trey is starting and then Jimmy is back starting. To me, that is the least ideal scenario. And I think the best version of this season to me is Trey Lance is starting at some point, even if it's midseason, right? But then maybe he gets a playoff game or even two if we're really doing well under his belt. I think that would be the type of thing to where we could go into next season and say, oh, you know, Trey started 8 games for us. He started a playoff game, right? He went out and proved himself to where we have confidence in him and we can still trade Jimmy Garoppolo. That's the kind of thing where I think that's best case scenario just for this team overall. And with Trey and with Kyle for the next 3 years, if Trey is successful and he is, you know, not even one of the best in the league, but just, you know, worth where we picked him at, if he's that good, this team should be in the playoffs, if not all 3 years, 2 out of 3 years, and they should make a deep playoff run at least once, if not twice, to me.
For me, the only thing that can stop this team is injuries. That's it. You know, as long as the coach is there, as long as the people are in place, as long as the scheme is in place, like Kyle Juszczyk said on somebody's pod, the offense is Kyle.
Right.
The offense is Kyle.
Yeah, and I just want to hit on this last point with Trey and how the offense is going to look. The one thing to where I had a lot of criticism with him early on was he didn't throw the ball a lot. He didn't throw it a lot in games. He didn't have high rep games. But at the same time, when I started thinking about the 49ers, I'm like, how many times?
Sound like somebody you know?
Yeah. How many times is he going to be asked to throw the ball? It doesn't matter if he throws the ball 8 times in the NFC Championship game because guess what? It's not like Trey was doing a lot of throwing in college. So on the one hand, I get excited by that because you're not going to be asking Trey to do something he's totally uncomfortable with. And I brought this up at the beginning too. He really is going to be so well suited for a run-first offense. So, you know, that's where I get excited. But then on the other hand, like you're saying, could you be stunting his development if you're only throwing the ball 12 times a game and you don't let him get his feet wet, right? That's the one worry with that kind of thing.
It's funny how people view the same thing differently. Let me explain.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo throws 8 passes in the NFC Championship. The run game was working, though. That's not about them not trying to make Jimmy Garoppolo throw the ball. Trey Lance throws the ball 8 times. I don't know, man. They didn't let him throw. I'm worried about that. Is there something wrong? If it's 1 for one, it's 1 for the other, guys. Come on. Let's figure it out.
Well, and you're right, because like even me and people like Grant, I even know, like we all kind of had this realization once they drafted Trey that it's like, it doesn't matter that he didn't throw that many times in college. He's not going to be asked to throw that many times in the NFL. And I think
win the damn game. That's all 49er fans seem to care about. They just throw win-loss record out there when they talk about quarterbacks. So, hey, win the damn game, and I'm with you on that, honestly. So it's just funny how things are viewed when people are pushing whatever narrative they want to push. He only threw the ball 8 times in the NFC Championship because they couldn't stop it. But they couldn't stop the run at NDSU, but you want to ding Trey Lance for that. Can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways.
You can't have it both ways. You really can. And gosh, I just get so excited with Trey and how this offense is going to look in the future. And I think if you're a Shanahan fan, it makes so much sense why Trey was the guy for Kyle Shanahan, right?
Yep. And I'm excited to see what Coach does, because Coach is taking Trey Lance, has given him another few years. Right. Now he's finally got his guy, and now he can push back on the developmental quarterback narrative that's on him. So him taking Trey Lance has kind of extended his window as a head coach in this league, or as the genius that he is, that I think he is, that everybody believes he is in the league. So the narratives around him, there's always a reason to why the team's not playing well. Injuries to the quarterback. Now he has his guy, and I think that he's going to have a ton of time to figure it out with Trey. And he bought himself some years, because I don't think he's going anywhere with this organization.
No. And I'll end on these 2 things for me. For one, Trey Lance is younger than I am.
Jason, that's insane.
I was talking to you beforehand. I told you I was 21. You were a little surprised. I'm 6 months older than Trey.
Insane.
I want to put that out there. The other thing, and I don't think I talked about this here, but I've talked about this on other streams. If you look at the run percentage for the 2019 49ers and for the 2012 Washington football team, both 51%, right? The Lamar Jackson-led offense with the Ravens, 55%. So to me, I think we can get some happy medium where it's almost, 53, maybe 54 with Trey, but you're not going to be running the ball any less. That's the thing. People talked about so much with the 49ers, with the quarterback they're going to be selecting. It's all about the throwing. It's all about what Patrick Mahomes showed to Kyle Shanahan, right? All this other crap, when it's really no, Kyle just needs to find the quarterback who fits his offense the best and is super talented. And to me, that just made it obvious that Trey was the guy in that way. So.
Yeah, I mean, and you got to remember too, a lot of those games, they're game specific. Like if you're running the ball and you're winning the game, then obviously you're not going to throw it. But there's going to be games where that's not going to work, and you're going to have to go and throw the ball. So Trey will be tested. It's not going to be all the way that they're just going to run. But I do expect this team to run the ball 30, 35 times probably, because when you draft Aaron Banks, you get Trey Sermon, still got Mostert. Good luck. And if Trey's the quarterback, good luck trying to stop that RPO with the push pass.
The red zone stuff alone is going to be filthy. I mean, like what Kyle, like what I was talking about earlier with Kyle, like the red zone stuff isn't great on paper in terms of numbers, but I think they're going to be like top 5 in the league with Trey running that offense back there with all those guys who are running behind the line of scrimmage who are all different versions of each other. It's just going to be this ultimate Shanahan offense to me. So I'm really excited, Jason. Man, thank you so much for doing this. I had so much fun talking ball with you. There are decent amount of people watching right now. If you are watching on YouTube, go in the description. If you don't know who Jason is, I don't know why you're here, but if you don't, go check my description. His YouTube, his Twitter, his podcast are all linked below, and I think my Twitter is too. But man, Jason, thank you so much. I had a hell of a time talking ball with you, and I'm glad we got to cover some of the stuff we got to cover today.
Ben, appreciate it. Anytime, man. Like I said, I'm just a guy like you. I enjoy talking ball with everybody. You have a great program here with yourself. Keep doing what you're doing, man. And for anybody out there that's in this, Amin, if you're watching, anybody else here that's doing the streams, just keep working, perfecting your craft. The more you work, the better you'll get with talking, the better you'll get with content. It's all a grind, and I'm happy to see people move up as soon as they start. I love watching the progress. I love watching the grind, because you get more comfortable. You start to see people coming into their own, Ben. So I'm excited to see where your channel goes, and I'm excited to see where this new wave of you young guys, and yes, I could say young guys because you just turned 21. I'm 36. So I get to watch you young guys be the new wave of journalists, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, and it is so much fun because I am just for people. I don't know if I've really talked about this too much on stream. I am a real journalist actually. I go to FSU. I cover Florida State sports, and to have this different way to talk to people, like I said earlier.
Florida State?
Yes.
I have somebody that you need to talk to.
Oh, well, who is
Andrew
that?
Pasquini. FSU, Jameis Winston stan. I mean, you could probably get him on here and not even talk 49er football and just talk FSU with him, and he would be through the roof, man.
Oh, man. You got us, talking about Kelvin Benjamin, Jalen Ramsey, Derwin.
All legends in his eyes. Anybody who ever went to FSU. Nobody better than Jameis, but anybody who ever went to FSU has a soft spot. Cam Akers, all those guys have soft spots in Andrew Pasquini's heart. I didn't even know that, Ben. That's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, no, I'm going into I'll just end this really quick on this. I'm going into my senior year at FSU. I've done some football stuff, but actually, it's funny, Jason. I cover the basketball team day in and day out, and our basketball team, I'll say this on live stream right now, we're a basketball school right now. We're not a football school. Until otherwise. It could change. This year, it could absolutely change. Hands in the air. Things could change in the next 2 years. Right now, this instant, Florida State has the number 2 recruiting class in basketball. We put a player. We're about to put a player in the lottery of this year's draft. We had 2 players in last year's lottery. Florida State's a basketball school until otherwise. So
I can't wait to troll Andrew with that news. I can't wait. I'm going to use those same points.
Just talk to him about Leonard Hamilton and tell him that they're a basketball school. That'll get him fired up. I promise you.
He'll be pretty upset. I can't wait.
I just want to check these comments real quick. Hey, primetime Deion Sanders.
Charlie Ward, Heisman Trophy, New York Knicks basketball player. That's legend. A trivia question for you.
Absolute legend. Only Heisman. Right. I'm glad you brought that up, Jason. I know you're a New York guy, so man, well, let's end that there for everyone. If again, go check out all of Jason's stuff if you haven't already. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel. If you're on Twitter, just go and check the link in my description. My YouTube's right there, and it should all be linked below. But hey, that's where we'll end today. And man, we're gonna have to do this again sometime soon because I feel like we have a lot to talk about, Jason.
No question, Ben. Anytime that you want me to hop on, man, I'm with you.
All right. Well, that's where we'll end it today. That was episode 6 of Shanalytics. And again, for everyone, I'm doing Vish Kumaran tomorrow, and I'm going to be doing another live stream. So watch out on my Twitter. I'll let everyone know what I'm doing there. But thanks again, Jason. This is so much fun.
Thank you, Ben. I was honored, man. Appreciate you, bro.